Black people, I need you to come closer to the screen. Listen, the way that these people look at you when they interview you, they're scrutinize everything that you're saying. They're looking at you to doubt, and they're looking at you to overcome that doubt. And that's why interviews are pretty much performative in my eyes. But we live in a world where it is absolutely necessary that we're able to articulate our stories in a way that makes people think that we're confident, competent, and of course, able to do it for them. I see bare people struggling with how to answer questions in interviews, or even they're struggling with how to even tell a story in a proper interview. Ranting is a thing. I totally get it. If you're a talker or if you're nervous, it's easy to rant. So I want you to steal my technique. I want you to steal my technique for answering interview questions and telling stories that will knock the socks off the person in front of you. All right. For this to work, we got to go all the way back to Shakespeare. Yep. I'm saying Shakespeare. I learned how to tell a proper story in drama class, the beginning, middle, and end, and also what makes for a good beginning, middle, and end, and that is what makes me a killer when it comes to interviews. I'm a killer because I'm a great storyteller. I'm a killer because I know how to, communicate competency while also emotionally manipulating the people in front of me. Yes, I know it's crazy. I just said emotionally manipulating the person in front of me. But when you think about it, that is what an interview really is. An interview is for them to scrutinize you so they have a good enough feeling about you in order to hire you. And the ones who can tell their story the best are the ones that win at this game the most. And you, as a Black person, already have an uphill battle because of all the prejudices that society has. Even for people that aren't racist, or even for people that don't try to operate from a bias, we all are victims of systemic oppression, and we are all victims to the danger of low expectations. The danger of low expectations is people defining your story for you and defining it from the perspective that you are not as great as you are. That while your household told you you have to do twice as much to get half as much, they're looking at you and they're saying this person is not even capable of doing half the work that I can, or that a white person can, or a non-Black person can. I'm speaking specifically to the Black community. We have all the studies and personal anecdotes to say that what I'm saying is actually very correct. So it is imperative, it is of the most importance that you master how to tell your story. Now, for me, I bit off of Shakespeare. The 3-act structure, classic, right? So I always start off with act 1, or the beginning of my story, where I'm detailing how a problem has pretty much fucked up the whole entire day. I'm telling them how shit was Gucci until it wasn't, and this problem fell into our lap and it made all of us miserable. What that might sound like would be, one time I was getting ready to leave on a Friday, and I got a phone call from our biggest client who we were this close to closing a deal that would have been worth millions for the company and would have given me such a nice commission check. And when I picked up the phone, I knew something was wrong because they sounded tense and irate. And when I asked them what was good and what was going on, they told me that Kathy down in accounting said that they can't afford our service. This was a client that I've had for 3 years who is renewed every single time. And not only was it bad that they went through another validation check when policy says it's supposed to be automatic, you had a brain dead coworker say to them that they can't afford their service. Why? Maybe the why was a little bit much, but you see how I'm setting the stakes. You see how the implications are there of what I'm able to do, the size of the deal, and why it was such a big deal that it was going to fuck up my whole entire day. Act 2, or the middle of your story, should be centered around identifying and then implementing the resolution, right? And I know this is where a lot of people actually mess up, because you would think that by identifying and explaining how you implemented the resolution, that should have told the whole story. But no, it doesn't. And that's why Act 2 is you talking about how you identified the problem and how you went about solutionizing and fixing the problem. What this would sound like might sound like, I listened on our CRM, the recording of the call. I heard that Kathy actually said that. I ran to go talk to Kathy and ask, why did this happen? And Kathy walked through, and we eventually identified that it turns out another company with a very similar name to our client applied, but they did not qualify. And unfortunately, the files seem to have gotten mixed up, and we ended up calling the wrong person. So I ran back upstairs, made sure to get approval from my manager to ensure that I could give some sort of giveaway as like some sort of sorry. And I called the client and I just explained what happened. I said I was sorry. I said that it was on me because how important they are to me. I should have hand delivered this process each and every step of the way, and I didn't. I also wanted to apologize and offer a gift, which was the form of a discount for the first couple of months on the renewal. Client was happy. Oh man, I was still sweating on that call. We talk about the solution, we talk about how we implement it, and this kind of gives context, and you would think that the answer ends there, but it doesn't. This is where Act 3 comes into play, the resolution. Do a little bit of a wrap up. This is good, especially if you're telling like a very long story, but you want to give a little wrap up so that you can always make sure that you end on a strong point and that your answer just doesn't fizzle out. So that would essentially sound like client was happy. He was ecstatic even, and everything made sense. He started quoting some philosophers saying about how it was less about what he was offended by and just how irrational the process felt. And he was glad that I not only took care of it, but I took extra personal steps to ensure that he understood what was happening. So much so that he actually invited me to go around to golfing with him, where he introduced me to three more potential clients. And I managed to flip this situation from a catastrophic failure to a big win. What didn't do good for my blood pressure, but we all walked away a bit happier, and my commission check was a bit higher, but my bosses were really impressed, and I was just able to sleep soundly knowing that I didn't blow up my biggest deal with like a client that I had a pretty good rapport with. The resolution is essentially a wrap up. We end strong. We are able to reaffirm our points, and it makes the story sound that much more cohesive. So remember, I'm doing my own little wrap up right here, right now. But remember the steps. The beginning, start off by telling them about how the problem fucked up your day, fucked up the status quo. The middle, talk about how you went about figuring out how to solve this to make sure it could never happen again, and then tell them the steps that you did to actually implement it. Act 3, or your end, is the resolution. Remind them who won. Tell them the before and after. Make sure that you emphasize what was learned and how this sets you up for a bigger win. And then always keep in mind, you always want to wrap it up. I digress, bad dad joke. But telling and using a framework for articulating stories and systemizing it allows you to properly focus on the points that you want to reaffirm in each of the segment. You want to talk about the problem. You want to establish the stakes in Act 1. You want to talk about how you went about finding the solution and what the solution was look like when you implemented it. And you want to talk about who won at the end of the day, right? Those are your anchor points. You can fill or retract as much detail the more intimately you know your story. But this is how you tell powerful stories in an interview that allows you to take control of the conversation and makes you more of a participant and less of an interviewee. Follow for more job tips. Stay dangerous.